Week 7 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 15 tight ends I'm ranking this week. Number 1, Tyler Warren of the Indianapolis Colts. Tyler Warren's been a big part of this turnaround this season for Indianapolis, and obviously with Daniel Jones at the quarterback position, so he's the number 1 target in this offense for this Indianapolis Colts team. Seems like weekly he's finding the end zone, and he was a first-round pick for a reason. So this week in a potential high-scoring game at the Los Angeles Chargers, I like Warren to go out there once again and be the best tight end this week. Number 2, Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals. Trey McBride last week, it was a good ball game for him. And honestly, this Cardinal offense, they were moving the football better with Jacoby Brissett in their quarterback. So Kyler Murray, we'll see if he's going to play in this week's ball game. It is a tough matchup versus the Green Bay Packers, but Trey McBride, one of the best tight ends in all pro football, obviously, and he's matchup proof. Number 3, George Kittle of the San Francisco 49ers. George Kittle most likely going to play in this one, practicing to begin the week. And this 49er team obviously needs reinforcements, where they've been down to their 4th and 5th wide receivers, even though Jake Tonges is the backup tight end, has filled in well for Kittle over the last month and change of the season. So this week, middle of the pack matchup. I know Atlanta last week had a great game plan and held the Buffalo Bills offense down for the most part. But George Kittle, he's a matchup problem. Linebackers, safeties, corners, whoever you put on him, he's still going to go out there and get his numbers. And with Brock Purdy back in the lineup as well, this offense, I think, could get things going. Number 4, Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys. So CeeDee Lamb most likely returning to the lineup, practicing to begin the week for this Dallas Cowboy team. I think Ferguson, his numbers are going to take a hit. And he's been on a tear, obviously. With CeeDee Lamb out, George Pickens and Ferguson have put up big numbers. And Ferguson, 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games for him. So this week, a good matchup versus the Commanders. They give up a lot of points over the last couple weeks. We saw last week the Bears go into Washington and have a good game. And Dak Prescott and Ferguson, they've been on the same page for many seasons. And Ferguson as well getting a nice contract extension in training camp. So with all those factors and even CeeDee Lamb coming back, there'll be even less coverage, I think, on Ferguson, where he could break loose in this one a little bit. Number 5, Dallas Goedert of the Philadelphia Eagles. Goedert, he's been the best receiving option for this Philadelphia offense this season. A.J. Brown really hasn't done much. Devonta Smith hasn't done much. And Dallas Goedert, he's another guy just like Ferguson. It seems like weekly he's finding the end zone for Philadelphia and fantasy owners. So him and Ertz have been on the same page. Yard after catch, he's been a big factor. And in the red zone is Dallas Goedert. And this week in a matchup in Minnesota, where they are a good defense, obviously, I just think Goedert with volume and obviously his red zone prowess this season, he's a top 5 option. Number 6, Sam Laporta of the Detroit Lions. Sam Laporta, last 2 weeks he's found the end zone. After week 1, he didn't do much from weeks 2 to 4 with Sam Laporta, but now he's getting things going. Saying he's right there of having a huge breakout is Sam Laporta. And now we've seen it over the last 2 weeks, including a nice back in the end zone one-handed grab at the Kansas City Chiefs. So this week, Monday Night Football, this should be a high-scoring game. Tampa Bay coming to town in Detroit. They can't stop anyone. In Laporta, let's see, for the 3rd week in a row, if he could have double-digit fantasy points and find the end zone. Number 7, Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers. Arguably the number 1 option in the passing game is Tucker Kraft. Last week, a decent ball game it was for him. But the thing is, with this Packer team, I still believe they're more of a run-first team than anything is this Green Bay Packer team. Tucker Kraft, he's had a solid season. We've seen some big ball games out of him this year as well. But this week, if they get off to a good start at Arizona, you know, they're going to run the football a lot with Josh Jacobs, and that's been the game plan all season long. Number 8, Darren Waller of the Miami Dolphins. So Darren Waller, it's been a solid year for him coming out of retirement. We know he missed the first 3 weeks of the season, but ever since then, from week 4 on, he's had 4 touchdowns in 3 games played in this season. And obviously with Tyreek Hill being out for the season, getting hurt in week 4, it's definitely boosted up Darren Waller in this offense. So pretty much options in the passing game with Jalen Waddle and Darren Waller, and obviously Achane out of the backfield catching the football. So this week it is a tougher matchup at Cleveland, but Darren Waller, he's still a matchup problem. 6'6", 6'7", big target in the red zone and in the end zone, obviously. And this week at Cleveland, I still think he could go out there and have a pretty decent game. Number 9, Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Kelce, I think he's going to take a little bit of a step back now with Rashee Rice back in the lineup. And Rashee Rice, supposedly they're going to throw him right into the fire. And he's going to get a heavy workload from the get-go after getting suspended the first 6 games of the season. So Kelce this season, he's been a touchdown dependent more weeks than not type of tight end for fantasy owners. Last week, of his better overall games. And this week, it is a good matchup versus the Vegas Raiders, where we know their defense really can't stop anyone. But like I said, with Rashee Rice back, and Kelce's been dependent too much at times on the touchdown this season. He's dropped a little bit in the rankings. Number 10, Zach Ertz of the Washington Commanders. This week, a great matchup at the Dallas Cowboys, a defense that obviously can't stop anyone. And the Zach Ertz has had a great career track record versus Dallas Cowboy team. Going back to his Philadelphia Eagle days, he's got a great IQ. Arguably, he is the number 2 option in this passing game. Jaden Daniels is always like Ertz going back to last season with the tight ends, always a young quarterback security blanket and best friend in big situations in the red zone and obviously on key third down. So this week at Dallas, where they got one of the worst linebacking crews and possibly the worst linebacking crew in all pro football, I think Zach Ertz goes out there once again and can find the end zone like he did last week. Number 11, Harold Fannin Jr. of the Cleveland Browns. So to me, it looks like David Njoku is going to be out in this game. He missed practice to begin the week with the knee injury. And we saw last week after the second quarter, he tried giving it a go, but didn't get back into the game with the knee injury. So this week, a good matchup versus the Miami Dolphins, another defense that really can't stop anyone. And we know they've been banged up all season long from training camp on is his team. So I think Fannin Jr., it could be a similar type of game like last week we saw from him, 7 catches, 81 yards on 10 targets. So this week with a good matchup, and him and Dylan Gabriel obviously have had rapport working with the second team or with preseason and training camp. He's a good option this week. Number 12, Hunter Henry of the New England Patriots. The last couple weeks here, Hunter Henry, the numbers have taken a little bit of a hit, where it was a Stephon Diggs game in week 5 at the Bills, and then last week at the Saints, it was the Kayshon Boutte game where he found the end zone twice. But this week at Tennessee, I think they'll get to Hunter Henry a little bit more. This Tennessee defense isn't good against tight ends. We saw Michael Mayer last week go for 5 catches, 50 yards, and find the end zone. And Hunter Henry, to me, is the number 2 option in this passing game behind Stephon Diggs. And even early in the season, he was the number 1 option. But Diggs has been getting healthier as the season's gone on. But this week at Tennessee, I still think he's a top 12 option. 13, Cade Otton of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So someone's going to have to catch the football over there in Tampa Bay. We know already Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, they're not going to play in this week's ball game at Detroit on Monday night. Mike Evans, we'll see if he's going to play this week, where the optimistic there's a chance he could. But the thing is, Cade Otton, the first month of the season, wasn't involved in this offense. And now the last 2 weeks, he's putting up double-digit fantasy points as Cade Otton. Another tight end who's a big target, 6'7", 6'8", run after catch ability, displays in the end zone is Cade Otton. So Baker, like I said, they could be down all 3 of their top wide receivers in this game. And it's going to be the 2 Johnsons, then Sterling Shepard and Otton as the top options. But even if Mike Evans does play in this game, I still think Otton's going to get his targets. And he's a tight end that could put up anywhere from 7 to 12 fantasy points. 14, TJ Hawkinson of the Minnesota Vikings. So right now, we'll see who's going to start at quarterback for this Viking team. I would say right now, J.J. McCarthy's the favorite. Obviously, he was the starter coming into the season. He was banged up with the ankle injury, missed multiple weeks. Carson Wentz, I thought, did a decent job. And now they're both practicing, so we'll see who's going to be the starter this week. But either way, Hawkinson's numbers haven't been great. But I've said this in other videos, I think this offense as a whole, and in terms of fantasy football, Carson Wentz is better for these guys if you want fantasy football numbers. But as an overall quarterback, I think McCarthy will be better as the year goes on. But this week, tougher matchup versus Philadelphia, good defense. And like I said, Hawkinson really hasn't had that breakout game yet this year. And the 15th and final tight end I'm ranking is A.J. Bonner of the Seattle Seahawks. A.J. Bonner, he's been under the radar all season long. I know he don't get a lot of targets. I know he's been a touchdown-dependent tight end at times, but he does have 3 games in a row with double-digit fantasy points and 4 out of 6 games this season with double-digit fantasy points. So arguably, he is the number 2 option in the passing game. Cooper Kupp, he's been inconsistent all year for Seattle. Obviously, Jackson Smith-Njigba has had the monster season and one of the best receivers in the league already in his 3rd year in the NFL. So A.J. Bonner, doesn't take much for him to have productive days, and we've seen that all season long. If it's either catching a touchdown or catching a deep ball like he did last week for 61 yards, he's going to find a way to put up points more than weeks than not going off this season. So that's the top 15 tight ends I'm ranking for Week 7 of the fantasy football season.